found my way of running this business in a way that works for me. At some point, you just have to delegate, and you just have to say, okay, I can't do this, and I'm not going to do this anymore. And to focus on your strengths, because at the end of the day, you are doing something that you love, and you're doing something that you believe in. And I think people see that if you are really passionate about your business.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. My name is Dario Shiliporti and I will be hosting most, if not all, of these episodes. After a bit of a break, we're back with what I guess we'll call season 2. And the first guest in this new chapter is none other than Alex from the Coffeevine in the Netherlands. I'm super excited to speak to Alex. I've been following their work for so many years. And we had our coffee featured on their program not too long ago. So I'm sure this is going to be a good one. I hope you enjoy. Here's Alex. Alex, thank you for joining me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be chatting with you today. It's a huge privilege.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, man. It's pretty surreal. Like, it's been quite a few years now that I've been following your work, and obviously your subscription program through the Coffeevine up till very recently has been Europe only. So there was no chance of working with you guys. But when the global box, came about, it was our opportunity, and you were so kind to give us a few goes with your cuppings, and eventually chose a coffee that we were thrilled to send to you. So yeah, I just want to say well done. You've got an amazing business, amazing following, and we've been very proud to be a part of it in a small way.
Thank you. Yes, I'm also glad that we got an opportunity to work together, and we actually ran into each other in Athens, if you remember. That was quite cool. It was very brief. I wish we had more time to properly hang out. So hopefully we'll get a chance at some other global coffee festival somewhere.
Absolutely.
Or maybe I'll just come down to South Africa and hang out with you at your beautiful roastery. How about that?
I was going to say that's a fantastic plan. We're also planning I'm not sure if you're going to get to the world of coffee. We're making a bit of a strategical call. My production roaster, Fani, just finished second at our National Barista Champs, coming oh so close to winning.
Wow.
Which would have put us, in Busan, and then trying to get to Copenhagen. And I think everybody's just taken a bit of a breath, and internally in the team, we're all a bit burnt out. So we might skip Copenhagen, but then tee up a Europe trip for later in the year to come and hang out with some of our wholesale partners and do a few bar takeovers and that type of thing. So we'll definitely chat about that
sounds great.
Once we've got dates, and see if we can align some time together. Yeah, man.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that.
How was World of Coffee for you?
I mean, I have a little bit of I get fatigued easily at these major events. This is, I think, now my 5th or 6th World of Coffee. And I'm planning to go to Copenhagen this year, but I'm only going to be at the festival or at the event for a few hours because it is a lot. I just had the Amsterdam Coffee Festival here last weekend, where my best friend and I, we hosted our comedy quiz, which is something I do next to the Coffeevine. And just running around the festival for a couple of hours before the quiz was already quite exhausting. Everybody wants to talk to you, and then people want to serve you their coffee. And then, you have made it barely around the first hall, and you already had 20 million coffees, and you're feeling like you're ready to take off like a rocket. So, I do really enjoy the sort of social aspect of these events, because I love seeing people in person. I don't have a cafe, so I don't get to see people on a regular basis. I don't have traditional wholesale customers in sort of the traditional sense that I could visit. My customers are spread out across the world in, around 60 countries. And when I go to these festivals, that's kind of the only opportunity that I have to see a lot of people in one place. And so from that perspective, I really do enjoy them. But there's a lot of stuff there that I find completely, irrelevant or uninteresting. So many like weird exhibitors where I'm like, what are you doing here?
Exactly.
But, who am I to judge?
That's amazing. It is a bit of a sensory overload. As you say, so many amazing coffees and connecting with so many amazing people. I think for us, it was really great. It was our first, our first World of Coffee. I was at host Milan for World Barista Champs a few years ago in 2021, but this was the first World of Coffee, and it was a really good experience. We've got ambitions to showcase our coffee on the WBC stage, so it was good to get over there, even though we weren't competing, and really soak it all in and prepare our minds for the future.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ominous plans.
Ominous plans, man. Yeah, I finally finished third last year and then second this year. So taking steps in the right direction towards being on the world stage, which is great.
Yes, brilliant. I mean, you got to take it one step at a time. I think a lot of people, they get kind of super ambitious and they want to win everything right away. I think you just need to first really sort of get some experience under your belt and learn the routines and all this stuff. I think it's very rare that somebody goes all the way on their first attempt.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Speaking of first attempts and trying over and over again, obviously, you have an incredible business with, I'm assuming, tons and tons of roasters sending you coffee all the time. And I really want to get into that a little bit later because I think you're in such a unique position to speak to trends that you're seeing and trends that have come and gone and what the future may look like. But before getting into that, I'm really curious to know a bit more of your background. I remember reading somewhere that you've got heritage in Mexico. And most people probably only know you by your extremely funky, fun videos you put out on your social media. So yeah, man, what is your background before getting into coffee?
So you're correct. I was born in Mexico. I have a Mexican mother and a German father. And I was born in Mexico City, but my parents left when I was around not 100, when I was about a year and a half old, just before the huge earthquake in 1984. So we kind of had a lucky escape. Wow. I grew up in Germany, and then I went to the UK for my final years of school and my university. And I've always traveled with a huge passion. I've already visited more than 100 countries, and I've always tried to visit places that are a little bit more unusual. Just as an example, my partner and I are actually going to Senegal in May, which is super exciting. I've never been to West Africa, and I try to combine it with culture and exploring and music and things like this. So we're actually going to see the Dakar Biennale and going to attend a little jazz festival in another city called Saint Louis. But that's just sort of by the way. And so I studied marketing in the UK. I didn't really fully know what I wanted to do, which is why I chose marketing. I thought it was quite a sort of universal degree that could be applicable for many different jobs. And after finishing university, I first went back home. I worked for half a year in a call center selling magazine subscriptions on the phone. And then a friend of mine and we went traveling for 6 months around the world. We didn't actually go to Africa. We started in India and then sort of made our way through Asia, Australia, the Pacific Islands to America. And while I was out there, I was applying for jobs, and I was actually, I wanted to go back to the UK because all of my friends from university were there. And it was through coincidence that I ended up in Amsterdam, actually. I applied for a job at British American Tobacco in Hamburg, where their German headquarters is and where I'm from. But I didn't get the job. But funnily enough, around the same time as I applied there, I got a call from a recruiter in the UK who said, "Hey, are you interested in a role at British American Tobacco in Amsterdam?" And I was like, okay, could be interesting. So I went out there to do the interviews. I got the job, and I moved here. And initially, I wasn't planning to stay here for as long as I did, but it's been 15 years now, and I can safely say Amsterdam is very much my home. My partner and we bought a place together last year, which is really exciting. So we actually just moved in a few weeks ago. I'm sitting in what will be our future guest room / office, but it's
amazing.
basically
Congrats.
just full of boxes and some stuff. I mean, we're slowly but surely getting settled in this new house, which is a major step for us as a couple, but also it's just a major upgrade for our living space.
So I've been, exciting, man. Well done. That's a massive step.
It is a massive step, and it is also great because I feel, I turned 40 last year, And I feel like I'm coming up to a lot of sort of anniversary type events in my life. So I turned 40 last year. This year is my 10-year anniversary with Coffeevine, which I'll get to in a minute. Michael and I have been together for 5 years. There's a lot of like sort of anniversary type moments. And looking back at the last 10 years of Coffeevine, so just very briefly, I was in tobacco for 3.5 years. Then I left. I moved into e-commerce. I was in e-commerce for about 3 years. And around that time is when I started discovering my passion for specialty coffee. And when I left my last job, where I was super unhappy, I hated the place where I was working. I hated everything about it. And when they told me that they were not renewing my contract, I almost jumped up and down and did a dance of celebration until my shoe soles were on fire, because it meant that I could take time off and really focus on building a business. I already had a blog. The Coffeevine was already a blog that I used to share my favorite cafe reviews of places that I was discovering along my journey. But then I had the opportunity to turn the Coffeevine into a business. And that's what I'm celebrating this year. The 10-year anniversary of Coffeevine, which funnily enough, I first promoted the business part of it 10 years ago at the first Amsterdam Coffee Festival. So last weekend was a little bit of an emotional moment for me.
Wow.
Because it was 10 years ago at the first edition of this festival where I actually first started telling people about my business. And then a few months later, I launched the box with 3 coffees from 3 different roasters. And the rest is history.
Have you been putting out monthly boxes since that first one?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I have. Yes, there was a short interruption because the first iteration of the business wasn't successful. It was way too complicated. We were trying to do too many things. The pricing was wrong. I was repacking coffee from roasters and they were not happy about it because, it was affecting the freshness, and it also didn't include their packaging. So I had to go back to the drawing board in 2016 to basically relaunch and redesign the box. And over time, it has basically come to what it is today. But the principle of what I do, which is I source 3 coffees from 3 different European roasters every month, that's still the same. And as you alluded to earlier, I have expanded the product offering to also include 2 global roasters every month. One of which was you last year, and also we have a so-called GEMS release, which is released every 2 months. It's a micro lot competition level coffee that I pick from usually kind of small boutique roasters, and that's offered alongside the regular selection.
Amazing. I must actually ask you, the sort of nano lot release, is that European roasters only, or should we be throwing our hats in the ring?
No, that's not exclusive to European roasters. We featured Honor some time ago with a really amazing coffee from Kenya. And generally speaking, I try to focus on sort of boutique roasters from sort of nearby. But it's not exclusive to European roasters. We have a very different budget for this coffee, for this selection, because it is limited and usually sort of very high level kind of micro lots competition, sort of kind of very experimental stuff, or very beautiful, super rare geishas and things like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we can definitely talk about it. I mean, I try not to spread the roasters that I work with across all the different things that I do. So, for example, there have only been 2 roasters, I believe, from the GEMS selection who have also been featured in the regular European selection. But that was because they had a very unique coffee with very special packaging, and it just looked very different from everything else they did. It was a great opportunity for me to highlight a very particular region, for example, or something else. Or, the first roaster that actually was ever featured in the GEMS selection was Manhattan. They helped me get started. It was during COVID that I did this. And they're also a regular European roaster partner. So there is some cross-pollination. So we can definitely talk about it sometime in the future.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me because we're seeing a lot of growth in that area of our offering. It's always interesting to consider what's happening in the world of economics and the impact that it's having on people's budgets and disposable income. But it does seem to me that there isn't much elasticity when it comes to the super high-end coffees. We always have a market for those. So we've actually been expanding in that space quite a lot. I bought a Stronghold S7X last year, and we really enjoying playing with some amazing coffees from some pretty unknown producers like Franceschi Coffee, for example, from Panama. I think we were invoice number 15, so that was a pretty exciting partner to start working with.
Cool.
I received samples from him for the year yesterday, so I can't wait to taste.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I actually tasted Eugenioides for the first time ever this morning.
I tasted that.
Yeah, pretty wild coffee, but it is exciting to explore those types of rarer coffees. So I'm
100%
excited to hear that you're doing that, and yeah, it's a space that we're seeing a lot of growth across, roasters all over the world, special guests, Rose, and all these amazing professionals starting really cool businesses, showcasing these rare and exclusive competition coffees. I think it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
You started the Coffeevine as a blog, and to me it sounds like your experience in the call center selling subscriptions and then into e-commerce and another job kind of all came together to start an e-commerce subscription following your passion.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say it was, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily very well prepared to be an entrepreneur. It was always my dream. I have a strong history of sort of entrepreneurship in my family. So I wouldn't say that I was very well prepared to be an entrepreneur. I think I was sort of forced to take a different route in my life. I think in corporate environments, I was never super happy because I felt like there were too many rigid structures in place that kind of prevented me from being myself. Even though I have to say that when I was at British American Tobacco, I did have a lot of liberty, and I had a really great manager for a long time who gave me a lot of creative freedom. But when he was gone, I suddenly felt like a mentor also disappeared, and suddenly this whole protection that I had within the company also went, and it kind of went back to being super corporate. And then I worked for a couple of startups. I was at Groupon, for example, which was at the time sort of the rising star of e-commerce. And while I was there, it was also one of the sort of fastest sort of sinking, crashing stars, if you like. Wow. Because people just realized that the business model was kind of unsustainable in a lot of ways. I saw a lot of businesses kind of go bankrupt because of Groupon. I was in the partnership relationship management team. So my department looked after all the businesses that had done a Groupon deal. And, we got showered with a lot of angry emails and calls and hatred because people just didn't know how to deal with all these people that were suddenly knocking on their doors with a Groupon voucher. But I also felt like the sort of environment was super chaotic. It was literally like a revolving door of staff. One day you walk in and half a team would be gone because they would just fire them. And it just felt really weird to be in these environments. And the last company I worked for was kind of a similar Groupon type of business. They basically poached me from Groupon, and they gave me a much higher role, which was great. So on my CV, it looked amazing that I made a management team. But the owner of the company was an old publishing house, and they didn't really believe in e-commerce. I'm not sure where they are today, to be honest. But I also had to travel very far, and the team was really sort of not very inspirational. My boss was a complete douche. So I just thought, like, what am I doing here? I was really disaffected. And this was around the time when I started really getting into specialty coffee. I always loved writing. That was a passion of mine since I was young. And before the Coffeevine, I had another blog called Peel Off the Layer, where I shared my travel stories. I also wrote for my student magazine at the time when I was at university. So I thought, okay, this is something that I'm enjoying very much. And then while I was still working for this company, I started doing sort of specialty coffee tours around Amsterdam, cycling, but also walking. which was really exciting because I love bringing people together. That's, I think, one of my sort of biggest strengths from a social perspective. And I just loved bringing people together over something that we could all enjoy together. And this was at the time when specialty coffee was really sort of in the early stages. The third wave, so to speak, was only just sort of starting to crash over us. And it's just something that I really loved. But suddenly running a business is a very different story. And I think that's one of the things where I think life does not necessarily prepare you very well for that. I didn't really know how to run this business in the beginning. I made a lot of mistakes, which is normal for entrepreneurs. I think we all go through that. I still make mistakes today, but it was very difficult. The business model wasn't really working. I didn't have a lot of starting capital. And it was a market that was very sort of, up and down. I still have this today, which is funny because in the summer months, a lot of my subscriptions are suspended or people cancel them. And in the beginning, I used to panic because I was like, oh my God, all these people are canceling their subscription. What's happening?
Absolutely.
And you would get sort of almost desperate. And I had a few moments like this. And I remember my mom, speaking to my mom on the phone, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I hate this. This is not working. And she said to me, like, you need to just hang in there. Just hang in there. This is normal. And you need to have a really long breath to be an entrepreneur. It's, it goes, sometimes you have great months, sometimes you have really bad months. It's just how it goes. And that was really helpful to me because I realized, she was right. And also it was, this was like during a summer period when everybody was away. And I found my way of running this business in a way that works for me. At some point, you just have to delegate and you just have to say, okay, I can't do this and I'm not going to do this anymore. And to focus on your strengths, because at the end of the day, you are doing something that you love and you're doing something that you believe in. And I think people see that if you are really passionate about your business, people see that. And I think that's what's also happening with me. People know that I'm passionate about the Coffeevine. They know that I love doing what I do. I love working with roasters. I love connecting with people. I love hosting events. I'm trying to do more of them almost monthly now. I'm trying to do a cupping. Normally, I do this cupping just with industry colleagues where I select the coffees. But the last 2 months, I did one in Barcelona in February. I did one in March in Utrecht. So I'm trying to also be more client-facing, as it were, because, as I said, I don't have a shop. So I'm trying to really, hone in on my strengths, and I'm trying to hone in on the strengths of the business. And now that we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary, I also want to sort of look back at the last 10 years and realize sort of to myself and like reflect on the things that went really well and the things that didn't go very well. And I think that's also part of the learning experience and the sort of journey that we go on.
Absolutely. And I think, it's so interesting that you say that. For so many coffee business owners, it's, the business started out of pure passion. It was a passion project. Mm-hmm. It was something they could see themselves enjoying for the long term, but not necessarily understanding from the beginning how it would work from a business perspective, what the model would look like. And I think a part of that has got to do with the fact that the industry is just so young. 10 years ago, I would imagine there were very few, if any, examples around you of anybody doing something similar to what you were doing. And anyone to sort of like base ideas off of or speak to around margins and, all the important business stuff that is very separate to coffee.
Whereas there were a couple of subscriptions out there. I didn't create this idea on my own. I was looking at other businesses that were already out there to kind of get inspiration. There was one in particular in Brooklyn at the time that I got really inspired by. Kaffa Box from Norway was already around, I believe. I saw on their social media, they're also celebrating their 10-year anniversary around this time. So there were others, but a lot of the people that I saw along the way, in particular during COVID, it just felt like there was an explosion of subscriptions. they've all disappeared. And I think that this is another thing, going back to what I just said, that you have to be really in it to win it. And as you said correctly, a lot of coffee people are doing what they do because they're passionate about coffee. They love what they do. They love the beverage. They love the producers. They love the process of roasting or the process of serving coffee or whatever it is. But I think there's also always, and this is not unique to this industry, but there are always people who see an opportunity and they think, oh, I can make a quick buck. I'll just set up a subscription and, people will sell me their coffee and I'll be successful. But that's not how it works. And the Coffeevine, has been for 10 years, has been my alter ego in a way. I feel like sometimes I am the Coffeevine.
Yeah.
This sounds funny, but it is really true, because I sometimes get people recognize me on the street, or they, if I'm in a cafe, they're like, "Oh, you're the Coffeevine, right?" And it's an amazing feeling, because I don't do this for the fame. I don't do this to be famous and run around giving autographs. I do this because I love what I do, and obviously you don't know how many people you reach. You can sort of see your statistics in your social media apps, or you can sort of see how many visitors your website gets or whatever. But you don't know how many people sort of really relate to you or kind of internalize what you're doing, or how many people get you. I mean, you don't know who is getting your boxes. I mean, speaking for myself, I know some of my subscribers. I recognize them. Some people I also have regular contact with, but my boxes go to hundreds of people every month. I don't know who they are, and if I suddenly end up facing them somewhere, like what happened to me in Milan last year when I was at the festival, I was running around and there were quite a few subscribers of mine, and they all grabbed me. They're like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's amazing. And you give us so much joy, and we love the Coffeevine mag, and reading all the stories, and we love the coffees that you're presenting to us and the roasters that you're featuring. We've never heard of this one, or blah blah blah." And it just feels really amazing that I have this reach, and that I can do this to people, and really give them this unique opportunity to expand their own horizon about specialty coffee.
Absolutely. And I think, speaking to what you mentioned earlier about boxes popping up through COVID in South Africa, we're sort of seeing that happening now. Over the last 3 years or so, I've been contacted by countless people looking to start subscription programs or starting subscription programs. And we actually have a very successful subscription program of our own in South Africa. With a few hundred people, and I can relate to that feeling of like shipping coffee out to all these amazing people and allowing the trust that they give us to allow us to curate an experience for them, and to curate their morning routine essentially, is pretty amazing. And I really appreciate that. But the biggest mistake I'm seeing people make is not selecting coffees the way that you do. So, in our case, we're selecting coffees that we want to roast and share with our customers. But in a subscription program like yours, you're curating a box every month from various roasters. You're not selecting the green coffees, you're selecting the roasted coffees. And there's a certain level of quality that your customers come to expect. And so many of these boxes will have roasters who do a really great job, but then to bring the price down, they also feature some really cheap coffee. And in my opinion, I mean, if I was a customer of theirs, I would feel, devastated to receive 2 good coffees and 2 terrible coffees every month. And but the quality you've been able to maintain is exceptional.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have also featured coffees that in hindsight I was actually not happy with, or where the coffee tasted different in the cupping and than what I received in the end. And of course, the problem is, for me, or the challenge, I should say, is that, of course, I have to select 3 coffees for hundreds of people. And obviously, not everybody's going to like what I'm selecting, because there are so many different taste preferences, but also there are so many different people around the world brewing coffee differently. I had, for instance, a couple of months ago, I had a couple of people reaching out to me saying, this coffee from this roaster, I can't really get any good flavor out of it, or it's very hard to find the right sort of recipe. And I said to them, yeah, but the coffee that I cupped when I selected it was excellent. And obviously I don't know which water you're using, what recipe you're using, what brew method you're using, how you're grinding the coffee, how you're storing it. There are thousands of different factors that could influence your experience. So that is challenging. But I think overall, just by having this very high standard of quality control that I employ, I can confidently say that I'm able to weed out the coffees that are really not good. And I've received a ton of coffees that have been really awful. And sometimes it's the coffee itself was really shit. Sometimes it was because the roaster made a mistake and it was not roasted properly, or there was some other defect or whatever. Most recently, I had a case where the coffee was roasted for a very specific type of water that we don't have in Europe. So when I was brewing it, it tasted really strange. And the roaster said to me, "But that's weird because here it tastes amazing." And I was like, how is this possible? So these are things that I navigate around. And of course, there are also months when I don't have a complete lineup, which is stressful. In February, for example, I only had one roaster for my global box because I just couldn't find a second roaster who either had a good coffee available, or one roaster sent me their coffees in horrific sample bags that I simply couldn't use, and another roaster dropped out at the last minute, so I was just left with one roaster. And that's also stressful for me because I'm trying to offer a complete selection every month, but there are so many factors that are working against me that I have to navigate. I mean, just a simple example. Just this month, I was planning to do a cupping today and to take care of creating all the content for the next edition tomorrow. But one of the coffees that was sent to me is stuck in customs because whatever,
wow.
some invoice, the invoice didn't feature a particular VAT number or whatever. And then there's just nothing I can do. So I had to, at the last minute, ask another roaster to jump in. They were like, yes, sure, we send you some coffee, but the coffee won't arrive until tomorrow. So I had to postpone the shoot until Monday because on Thursday I'm going to London to the coffee festival. So I have to also be flexible. That's another thing that I learned is you have to sometimes really let go of these very rigid structures that you have as a business, because you have to be super agile to be able to respond to unexpected situations. And that's something that has definitely helped me a lot to navigate through the 10 years of running the Coffeevine and Fresh Drip, which is my other business, which I should just mention.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to speak about that as well as the comedy quiz. But before getting to that, over
Yes.
the last 10 years, I'm assuming that there have been some pretty dramatic changes in consumer preferences and
Mm-hmm.
style of coffee being roasted by the better roasters around the world.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest trends that you've seen, and have there been any over the last 10 years? Have there been any trends you've seen come and go really quickly, like fads, or has it been more of a slowly changing preference over the last 10 years?
I mean, when I started, people were talking about washed versus natural. 10 years ago, they were talking about the sort of classic flavor notes. They were talking about the coffee being from Brazil or from Colombia or from Ethiopia. Then we started talking about the actual producer. Then we started talking about different kinds of processing methods, honeys. Then we started talking about the varieties. Obviously, people have learned more over time as a result of just the evolution of specialty coffee and a huge amount of knowledge that is out there. Social media alone is peppered with thousands of people who are creating content around coffee. A lot of it is just memes. Others are trying to do some very serious stuff. So people have a lot of access to information, and I think that has helped advance the coffee industry a lot, and has also maybe pushed roasters in some ways to be a little bit more innovative or to maybe push the boundaries of certain things. Obviously, one fad that has thankfully gone away was this Nordic roast, which I despise. Was very fancy a couple of years ago. People were like, "Oh my god, it's so so fresh and so grassy and all this stuff, but it just tasted horrible. It was like hay, these coffees that were so underdeveloped that they were almost green. And people were celebrating this shit. I was like, this is terrible. It tastes gross. So I'm glad that that's gone. I'm also a little bit over this, this. I mean, one of the things that people are doing a lot, which I struggle with sometimes, I mentioned this in another podcast that I did a couple of weeks ago, is using these flavor notes in their on their labels that are very exotic and often just have no relevance to people who are maybe not locals. Using very, very rare fruits, or using very, sort of very particular types of like Coca-Cola and things like this. I've seen all sorts. And I just think that, this is not very accessible to people who don't live where you live or who have not had the chance to taste certain things. And it makes it very almost like exclusive, if you like. Which I don't think helps coffee very much. The other thing that I'm glad is gone is these overstuffed labels that just have so much information that you are overwhelmed. I prefer to just have a really simple design that just has, beautiful design for the bag or the package or whatever it is, with some really basic information about the coffee. You don't have to write an essay for the label. You just keep it simple, and that's one thing that I really hated, when these labels were so busy that you just didn't even know where to look. And I think another fad in some way is this extreme use of these crazy fermentation processing methods. I think people are getting tired of not understanding what's going on with their coffee. Because initially it was just anaerobic, maybe some other lactic fermentation or a thermal shock or whatever. But even that already is hard to understand. And I think the more you are going down this rabbit hole, the more people are getting turned off by the fact that they just don't get it anymore. And I think that is a little bit of a problem, actually, because I know why people do this. I know why producers are going down this route, because it does help their coffee to score higher points. And that is the goal, because of course they can sell them for a better price. And it's also allowing people to achieve different flavor profiles with their coffees, which they couldn't do before, or maybe use different types of varieties that they're growing on their farms together and create a blend, and then use some kind of process to sort of create a really amazing cup profile. I get that. But if I'm the customer and I go into a cafe and I'm looking at the bags on display and I just don't understand what's going on, I will feel really confused. So I'm actually noticing this more and more, that some roasters are starting to move away from that again, going back to basics, if you like, a little bit more like, okay, we just do washed, natural, maybe a honey or two, maybe an anaerobic, but really keep that as a sort of more of a sort of limited or rare or something a little bit extra. But when it comes to the sort of classic coffees, people are going back to tasting the terroir that is in the coffees, which is completely impossible to taste when you have these fermentations. You just don't know. It could be anything. And I think that's one thing that, when you compare coffee with wine, which was done a lot over the last 10 years, people are always saying, yeah, but coffee is like wine and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's nothing like wine. So stop comparing it with that, because it has nothing to do with each other, except for the fact that it's both a natural product. And that's where it ends. But this is basically when you're going back to that comparison and you say, well, with coffee, it is also about tasting the terroir. It's about tasting the coffee's origin. It's about tasting the variety. It's about tasting the country, all that stuff. That's something you cannot do with these fermentations, because it completely masks that flavor profile. So I think that's one thing that is maybe reversing a little bit, but
That is really
what do you
great
see?
no, it's so interesting to hear your perspective on it, because I actually hated coffee until I was 24 years old. So 12 years ago I wasn't drinking coffee at all.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for that is, it turns out, which I didn't know at the time, I have a very, very sensitive palate when it comes to food and anything I consume. I'm extremely fussy. and the
Hmm.
coffee I had access to was just terrible. It
Are you a
was.
fussy eater,
I'm a fussy
Dario?
eater. I'm an exceptionally
Oh,
fussy eater.
I don't want to ever go out for dinner with you because you'll just be like, no, I don't eat this. I don't eat the other.
Do you know what? I'm an undercover fussy eater. No one really knows because I just pick what I enjoy from the menu, but I don't talk about the fact that I'm a fussy eater in public.
Okay,
So
okay,
I'm not one of those
okay,
fussy eaters who makes it known.
okay, good.
I try and keep it undercover because I've been very judged for being a fussy eater.
Okay, okay.
But
That makes you a very complicated dinner guest if you're having a dinner party at your
yeah,
house and
it
you're
is.
just cooking something and and then suddenly it's like, oh, can I have that without this and blah blah blah.
Oh, that's so funny. It doesn't happen to me very often. I must be honest.
Okay,
I
all
think I've
right.
got better with age. So
Like a good wine.
like a good one, like a good one. Maybe this is
Fabulous.
the only part of me that's got better with age though is my eating preferences. I think
Okay.
the rest of me is just falling apart. Shoulder surgery
Oh,
and small
come on.
back and oh,
Oh, nonsense. I don't believe it
but
one bit.
in all seriousness, I think my hatred of coffee, to be honest with you, at that time was because of access to really, really bad coffee. My parents would drink, bad
Hmm.
instant coffee, and the coffee shops around us were serving very hot, very bad coffee. And
Hmm.
it was only later on in life where I got exposed to now I would consider still very bad coffee, but it was a lot better than what I had been exposed to. We didn't really
Hmm.
have a specialty coffee scene where I live. At all, and through access to better coffee, I started to understand what was possible. But
Hmm.
the progress for me has been really, really fast. It's been a lot of exposure all at once, trying to understand what was happening in a very complex industry, and
Hmm.
certain beliefs I've held to be true through exposure to people like Tim Wendelboe and the team from Coffee Collective and Say and all of my favorite roasters around the world, all of those, sort of premises that they presented and or theories that they presented around what good coffee is has really been tested lately.
Hmm.
Tim
Hmm.
Winterbo's beautiful washed Kenyans are no longer the star of the show on a cupping table with, peach co-ferments and 1440-hour thermal shock anaerobics from Colombia, and
Hmm.
it's hard for them to stand out. But when you peel back all the layers and you actually take away the complexity of those processing methods, as you said, you're not actually tasting terroir, you're not tasting varietal, you're tasting processing. And I think
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
noticing a trend away from that.
Yeah.
I think the competition stage is always a little bit ahead of where consumer preferences are, because that's where the competition baristas are leading the way in many examples.
Mm.
And already we're seeing the competition stage favoring clean coffees again. We're heading back in
Yes.
that direction, which is so good to
Yes.
see.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I do the same. I know that there are people out there who want those particular kind of coffees. They really want those experimental lots where you taste Hubba Bubba and I don't know, cherry Coke and all this sort of crazy stuff. And I'm not saying that I don't like them. I have had some anaerobic coffees, for example, that were really extraordinary. I remember my first real experience with a outstanding anaerobic processed Brazilian coffee from a roaster in Romania called Meron, where I still have this clear picture in my head of the coffee tasting like dark rum. And it was really funny because I have a customer in the Middle East who told me afterwards that this was the closest he probably will get to drinking rum in his own country because it's a dry country. And it was such a funny experience because I tasted the same, and it was really quite extraordinary. But I've also tasted a ton of anaerobic or even other fermentation process coffees that tasted so horrific. Just the other day, I cupped a lot of coffees from a very particular producer in Colombia, and I know a lot of these coffees were just experiments. They're not necessarily supposed to be. I mean, they are sold, but they're not necessarily what you would expect to, expect coffee to taste like. But there was one coffee, I think it was fermented for. I'm not kidding. I think it was like 200 hours, and the cup was so unpleasant that I would never drink or buy something like that and sell that to my customers. I just think it's too extreme, and it's coming to a stage where, yes, they're pushing the boundary of what coffee is possible, or like what is coffee is, what is coffee? It's what is it supposed to taste like? I think we are experimenting with that sort of notion, and we have been for the last decades, with these very clean, beautiful washed coffees and exploring naturals and things like this. And now, of course, you have these crazy fermentations where you think, wow, this is incredible. I never thought coffee could taste like this, but it's not necessarily tasty. And I think when we go back to this argument we just made, where we were like, okay, what do customers really want? And I think, yes, people are kind of going back to this back to basics approach, where they just want to have tasty coffee. And I think these extreme coffees are just not tasty. That's my personal opinion. That's why I just don't really like featuring them anywhere.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It really is. We've had some surprising coffees as well. I'll use an example: Lost Origin in Panama. Andy and France are doing some amazing work on controlled fermentations, taking their experience from making beer, and with a partially government-funded lab, they really are pushing the boundaries of what coffee can taste like. And being in Panama, they have access to some of the best green in the world, best cherry in the world. So we got 2 amazing lots from them, from a farmer called Don Benji, and both of them, there was a Margahipe and a Geisha varietal. We're actually still to release them locally. We've shipped some to one of our wholesale customers in Taiwan, and the coffee was very well received. It's extremely expensive because it's produced in such low quantity, but when I received the coffees, I was expecting these wild fermentation tastes or flavors, and they just weren't present. They were extremely advanced fermentations and long fermentations, but very controlled. And the coffees were so clean. They are absolutely spectacular. And for me, what that proved was, I believe anaerobic fermentation, and I believe the use of bioreactors and bacteria from the farms and so on and so forth can lead to extremely good cup quality. But as you said, I think it's been taken too far in some cases. And I think that producers without the experience and without the understanding of what's actually happening in those bioreactors and inside those tanks are ending up with some pretty rotten flavors, actually. And because we don't know what they are, we're saying, wow, that's so interesting. But is it interesting good, or is it just interesting?
It's also a matter of, it's a completely different field. You're not, as a coffee producer, you are basically a biologist. You cannot be very good at everything. And that's just, how it is.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. I completely agree with that. And the breath of fresh air, I think, is the fact that, the general consensus amongst the guests I've had on this podcast has been, we are heading back towards, we've kind of gone out there and we've seen what's possible, and now we're kind of reverting back to what we enjoy, and not necessarily only washed coffees. As you said, there's some fantastic anaerobics out there, but less fermentation, more terroir.
I think that's where it's going again, because I think it's also hard for people to really navigate through the world of specialty coffee if everything tastes so extreme and different that you just cannot really make a mind map of where the coffee could be from. And of course, there are varietals that are grown in different countries where they are not originally from. Thinking of like SL28 and SL34 is grown in El Salvador, for example, or things like this. But that's still different. And I think, people are just going back to that. And I, in any case, when I'm selecting the coffees for my box, I'm always looking for super clean, super fresh, super outspoken coffees, but outspoken in the sense that, you can really taste the quality of the product and the sort of inherent characteristics of the product, rather than something that was added later.
That's really cool. So I know you mentioned earlier the comedy quiz, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And what was the other project?
I have a drip bag company called Fresh Drip, which is something that I launched in 2017 after a visit to Japan. Basically, I was at a point in my life with Coffeevine that I thought, okay, things are going better. This is exciting. I'm reaching a lot of people, but people maybe also want to brew better coffee on the go. And I had just been to Japan, where I discovered these drip bags at a local roaster in Kyoto called Weekenders, who I've also worked with for the Global Box. And they gave me, well, I bought some of these sachets and I thought, wow, this is really cool. I was with a friend of mine. We were staying in an Airbnb, and the next day I brewed that coffee with this drip bag, and it tasted phenomenal. And I just thought, wow, this is so genius, because it allows you to basically brew really great coffee on the go without needing to take all of your equipment with you, which I normally do.
So is it a pour over bag, or is it more like a tea bag?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's a pour over bag, exactly. So I contacted the roaster, who gave me the name of the company that makes them. They in turn told me that there was a German roastery that had a machine, and blah 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 blah. Long story short, I came up with this concept to basically produce those bags in Europe under my own brand called Fresh Drip. And initially, it was meant to be for specialty coffee shops primarily. So I wanted to basically sell in multi-roaster cafes and other places where people would buy beans. But I very quickly realized that that market was just not there. A lot of people also later on told me that they didn't want to sell something that was already pre-ground and pre-packaged, even though, funnily enough, nowadays a lot of roasters are actually offering these bags themselves. But at the time when I launched, people were like, oh no, this is all, it's not going to be fresh, and it's not going to be, it doesn't have our coffee, and blah, 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 blah. And it was really hard for me to sort of make that business work. So I had to actually also completely pivot with Fresh Drip. So we ended up going from specialty coffee to kind of commercial coffee. I changed a lot of the packaging, design, the wording. We don't use origin countries anymore on the packaging. Actually, that's the latest iteration of the packaging, which is now being rolled out. But I also completely changed the approach. Instead of going after these cafes and sort of small businesses, I just went after hotels and outdoor retailers. And that has been the backbone of the business for the last, couple of years. And Fresh Drip is very successful. I'm very, very happy with where it is. We have some amazing customers all over Europe who love the product. And I'm very proud of what I've achieved. Having said that, I am also in the process of selling Fresh Drip, because I don't produce it myself. So that's already a big problem for me. I don't have the production capability to run this business in-house. So everything's outsourced. And of course, that means that I'm at the mercy of my producers. Whenever they increase the prices, I have to do the same. Sometimes the lead times are very long. Sometimes it's very complicated, when I launch a new variant, or when it's just something that, I'm kind of like hitting a wall. And this is something that I've also come to peace with. I'm okay with that. I've given it my all. It's a very successful product. It keeps growing and growing and growing, which is amazing. I can barely keep up. Like, I'm literally right now, as we are recording, I'm completely out of stock, which is insane. But
Wow.
It's just not something that I can see myself really making a big business without investing in the production facility and so on, which would cost me several €100,000, which I don't have, and I'm not willing to go there. So looking to sell it, which I have some interested parties, and I'm hoping that it'll go through. And having at the same time, the comedy quiz is something that I started 3 years ago during COVID with my best friend Maxine, who has been my best friend for years. And we were all stuck in lockdowns. We were like, okay, what the fuck are we doing here? This is all so sad. And I've always enjoyed hosting events and parties. And one day we just approached a local members club called Soho House here in Amsterdam. And I said, hey, why don't we host a quiz? It could be super fun. And they were desperate for online events at the time, because they were closed, of course. And so they invited us to come in and do the quiz online. And it was the first one was a total meltdown, because everything just was such a mess. It was hilarious. We were stuck in this hotel room with my partner and another girl who was taking pictures, and we were using a really crappy. We was just using Zoom, and I think we were using like PowerPoint. And Michael was trying to create these kind of jingles that you have in game shows using his phone and a little speaker. And we were basically drinking the bar dry as we were doing this, because we were just like, let's have fun. And then by the end of the quiz, we were super wasted and everybody else was super wasted and we didn't really know what was happening anymore. But it was so much fun, and this was so much fun.
Is that where the comedy came in?
Well, the comedy was always there. And I have to say, I have been living my life sober for 3 years already, which was a big change that I implemented at a sort of turning point in my life.
Wow.
Where I was like, okay, I need to make a change in my life that will improve my quality of life. So I've been sober, and my best friend actually started her sobriety a few months ago last year, which is amazing.
Yeah, congrats.
So, we were both notorious party people. We were notorious socialites. We were at every party, every event in Amsterdam and beyond. And this has really changed who I am. And as I mentioned before, I turned 40 recently, so I feel like I'm also in a different phase in my life. I sort of sometimes call it my live, laugh, laugh phase. Because I'm sort of just like, enjoying every moment. I'm trying to make every moment count. And the quiz is something that I just really love doing because it is, first of all, a way for me to be in front of people. Because we are doing this quiz now several times a month for different people. So we do it for Soho House. We do it for a local sort of student accommodation concept called the Social Hub. We do it for big corporate clients like Meta, Netflix, PVH, TomTom, a lot of big corporates ask us to come in and do a quiz for their company parties or their team building workshops and things like this. And it's just so much fun because it's just silly. We can be ourselves. We love hosting, and people love the quiz. And actually, we did one at the Amsterdam Coffee Festival last week as well, which was super fun. We had more than 30 teams playing, and it was just such a racket, and we loved it. So I'm trying to free up a little bit more time for these kind of things. Coffeevine also needs a little bit of, Coffeevine also needs a little bit more of my attention because, of course, I'm splitting myself in 3. I have Coffeevine, I have Fresh Drip, I have the quiz, and then on top of that, I'm also trying to live a life. So something has to give, and for me, the easiest thing to part ways with is Fresh Drip, but I wanted it to go into the right hands because I have amazing customers and I don't want them to not use the product anymore. So that's also a balancing act I have to sort of strike to make sure that I find the right buyer who can continue the business and make it thrive while I'm focusing on other things.
You are a busy man, Alex. There's a lot going on
there. I am.
That is
well,
very
since
cool.
Since I don't drink anymore, I'm telling you, every day for me is a Monday. That's going to make me sound like a workaholic. I am a little bit of a workaholic, but the good thing is that I feel I'm super clear-minded. I don't waste my time on distracting things. I'm never hungover, which is amazing. So I have a lot more time on my hands, and that's allowed me to be able to do these things. I think if I was still running around from party to party and drinking and stuff, I just probably wouldn't be where I am today. And that's also been part of the reason why I'm so excited about everything. I'm looking forward to the next 10 years of Coffeevine and the next 10 years of my life and the next 10 years of whatever. And it's just been such a great journey for me.
That's such a great place to be.
Yeah,
man. I think that's what it's all about. It's about having a positive outlook for the future and having goals and passions and ambitions and big plans, I always say I'm just a kid with big dreams. And I think that's a great way to live. I was actually assembling a little pedal go-kart for my daughter this morning. And
cute.
So she's 4, turning 5, and my little boy is 2, and they keep me really, really busy. Amazing little kids. And I was assembling this go-kart, and I said to my partner, I think I'm more excited about this than what she's going to be. And Katie had such a good view on it. She's like, well, when you stop being the most excited kid in the room, that's a pretty sad day. And I thought, that's so cool. Like I strive to always be the most excited kid in the room, no matter how old I get. And it's definitely it's a good place to be. So what are you most excited about for the future of Coffeevine? Is it the coffees you're getting to work with, the people you're connecting with, the products you're putting out there? What are the plans for the future? What can people look forward to?
So first of all, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to launch a new website, which is going live next week, so middle of April. And that's one thing that I've been working on for months. It's almost like getting to a point where I'm like, I just want to get it fucking over with, because it has taken up a lot of my energy, and I just, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I'm very happy that this project is almost at the end and I can launch it. It will be an improvement, of course, for our customers, but also for me as a sort of entrepreneur. And it's going to offer, much better navigation and just much better structure for the website. That's one thing. The other thing, of course, is the upcoming 10-year anniversary, which will be in June. And I'm planning to do a party here in Amsterdam to celebrate. So I'm still working on the sort of idea and concept for this. But it's just going to be a fun party, probably at our warehouse, because we have this big open space outside with a big parking lot and this big grassy area. And if it rains, which wouldn't be a surprise in Amsterdam, we can also go indoors. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to as well. I think generally speaking, I'm just looking forward to continuing to develop the brand and to explore doing different things with it. I am also working on a different concept, which is related to Coffeevine, but it's not Coffeevine. I can also do it without Coffeevine, as it were, which is I'm working on a TV show concept. I've been working on that for quite a while. And I'm hoping that at some point this year, there will be some progress with this, that we can maybe start filming soon, because I want to be doing more of this. I love traveling. I love hosting, telling stories, meeting people. And that's something that I really love doing. And that's what this concept for the TV show is about.
Amazing. Reading between the lines, you have an open invitation to come to South Africa and hang out with
us. Thank you. I would love to go back. I mean, the last time I was there was 2018, I think, and I was there for a wedding in Stellenbosch, and my friends and I, we traveled through the Karoo, and we went all the way to Port Elizabeth, and then back to Cape Town, and that's when I first discovered that Cape Town has a pretty epic specialty coffee scene.
Absolutely.
I mean, you were just there. You told me the other day at the tattoo convention.
Yeah,
and
was incredible.
Yeah, and I love Cape Town. I love South Africa. My partner's never been in South Africa. We're going to touch down in Senegal in a couple of weeks for the first time together in Africa. So there's a lot to see, and of course, Africa as a big coffee producing continent has a lot of stories to tell, and I will make sure that if this show goes ahead, that I will be recording some episodes in Africa.
Absolutely.
But I think it's just, for me, it's just to continue where I am with Coffeevine. I also want to rebrand. I want to elevate the brand in some ways, introduce some new packaging, upgrade the branding, upgrade some of our promotional materials. I want to introduce some merch. These are all things that have been sort of in the pipeline for a while. But of course, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a busy man, but I also don't have unlimited capacity to do everything at once.
Absolutely. I can relate.
And even though I'm delegating a lot of stuff, of course, I'm not doing the redesign or the programming myself. These things take time, because you also want to be with the right vendor or the right supplier, and they have busy schedules and blah blah blah. So before you get anywhere, a few months have passed. But yeah, I think that's quite enough for 1 year.
that sounds like a heck of a lot for 1 year, and it's very, very exciting, man. Congrats on
for sure.
Congrats on 10 years. that is a massive milestone, and we'll be celebrating with you in June from over here.
Yes, for sure. I mean, to think back at where I started 10 years ago, and to think that I'm still here and thriving, and all the sort of people that have come and gone, and businesses that have come and gone, and yeah, I'm still here. I'm still doing what I love, and I think that's just an amazing achievement, and I cannot wait to see what the next 10 years will bring.
That is so exciting, Alex. I really love the energy. I love what you do, and yeah, we're fans from all the way over here, and always keeping an eye on what you're doing and the coffees you're releasing, and yeah, it's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think from my side, that is a fantastic episode. I don't know how you feel, if there's anything else you'd like to cover, but
I mean, I'm happy that you had me on. It's quite funny because I did a podcast recently with my friend Brody, the Nomad Barista, and for some weird reason, I don't know why, I was saying a lot, like 1,000 times in the recording, and I listened back to it later, and I was like, huh. This is not how I talk. Why am I saying this all the time? And everybody was like, oh, you say a lot. And it was so funny because I don't know what was going on. And yeah, I usually think that I'm quite articulate and I love talking. So yeah, it's just funny that that happened. But I think yeah, here we go. It's just been a really nice experience talking with you.
Thank you.
Obviously, we've had a really warm relationship since the first time we got in touch with each other, and I love what you do. You are not based in a big city. That's one thing that I think is quite amazing. You're really trying to focus on growing specialty coffee in South Africa, but also trying to do something amazing for South Africa on the global stage, trying to work with cafes around the world, and also be very present as an entrepreneur and as a coffee roastery owner. And of course, I'm super happy that your guys and girls are getting so far in the competitions. And I think South Africa is just a really vast, untapped market that still needs a lot more development when it comes to specialty coffee. And you guys are doing an amazing job, and it's been a real pleasure working with you for the global coffee roasters selection last year. And of course, this is not the last time we have worked together. So
absolutely, Alex. No, I really appreciate it, and the vote of confidence in our work has been greatly appreciated. I think that's been one of the biggest things for us, and probably one of the reasons why I have been so steadfast on increasing our international reach. It's not easy, to ship coffee from here to get shipping rates affordable enough to be able to compete in that space is really difficult.
Yes,
we shipped 75 kilos of coffee to Sweet Spot today, and it's a massive thing for us to have our coffee standing on the shelf next to the best roasters in Europe and the best roasters around the world, and to get honest feedback, because that's what I always ask for, is honest feedback. And yes. I can say that that's the relationship I've had with you from the beginning, is sending coffee and getting honest feedback, going back to the drawing board a couple of times to find coffee suitable for your box. And I have only respect for what you do, and I wish you and your team fantastic things for the future. I'm looking forward to seeing what I'm looking forward to seeing the rebrand or the refresh. We're in the process of one ourselves, and I know the undertaking. I know it's massive. So that's really exciting to hear of all the great plans in the works. So yeah, Alex, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to catching up in person somewhere around the world. Maybe we'll come visit.
If not in Copenhagen, then absolutely. If you come to Amsterdam, I'll show you around.
Amazing. Good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Keep well, and all the best with unpacking those boxes in your new home.
Cheers.
Enjoy getting it set up. All right, Alex, we'll chat soon, man. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Ciao. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. I had a great time chatting with Alex and getting to learn more about the man behind the brand. Coffeevine has got such a big reach around the world, and I've been a fan for such a long time. It was just awesome to get to spend this time chatting. I hope you gained from it. I'm really looking forward to spending more time with Alex and his team in the future, and certainly being inspired continuously by the work that they're doing. So whether or not you enjoyed this one, there's another one coming soon. This is season 2, and we're really excited to have great conversations with amazing coffee professionals from around the world, and we hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao.